pull the fabric of space, distort space and time toward the craft, so they can traverse a tremendous amount of distance in virtually no time at all. They're not traveling in a linear fashion. They're essentially bending space, and space, the fabric of space, essentially, and gravity and time are all interlaced. When you start distorting gravity, you distort time and space along with it. And these aren't theories. We've known these for a while. We just have no way of controlling them. But apparently, the civilization has found out how.
Did you people manage to fly one?
They've done several test flights in it, not out of the atmosphere. These are short, controlled, low-altitude flights. Essentially, they have a prized possession here, so they're not going to risk taking this to a point where they could potentially lose it as the gravitational pull of the Earth, or going too high. But I witnessed several tests outside the compound, and also one, probably about 100 feet away from the craft.
How did the craft behave in the flight?
Very, very quietly. It lifted off. It made a slight hissing sound, a slight blue glow from the bottom, probably due to the extreme voltage that's present on the craft. After a short time, that disappeared as it rose and just gently glided, and later sat down. It was very uneventful, but almost totally silent.
Can you please describe the briefing documents and the information contained in it?
There were an extensive amount, 120 some odd briefing documents, all of them very short, and essentially what they were doing was just giving me an overview of the other aspects of the research being done on the craft, and the bulk of the information, all the technical information, was specifically dealing with the power and propulsion system, which is what I was supposed to be working on. But there were documents basically stating that these were aliens that possessed the craft. There were some autopsy reports that, not very in-depth. They had no reason to give me in-depth reports on that, but they did have pictures, and, two pictures actually, of the alien carcass with the chest cut open and a single organ removed, and the organ itself was sectioned. It seemed to, from my non-medical viewpoint, it seemed that this one organ performed many functions instead of one. There were documents on metallurgical work being done on the craft, and really every aspect that separate groups were working on. And I'm sure they got a briefing on what my group was working on, a very abbreviated one, as I did on theirs.
And did we say where the aliens come from?
Yeah, it did mention the Zeta Reticuli system, and how that information was extracted from the craft, I don't know. Maybe there were star charts or something along those lines.
Did they contain any information about the history of mankind, the alien involvement in the history of mankind?
Not really. Nothing that said, well, this is the way things were. There was mention of alien intervention in the past. I mean, extremely long ago. Something along the lines of millions of years ago. From the information that I looked at, it seemed that, and there again, these are briefing documents, so I can't myself ascertain whether or not these are true. I can only assume it because the briefing documents I read that pertain to the propulsion system were true, because I dealt with that. But they did make reference to contact with the Earth over 10,000 years ago, also with genetic alterations that ended in a simian being, and all kinds of claims.
Did you ever meet an alien or some alien body?
Other than in pictures, no. I've mentioned several times that I'd walked through an area and looked in a small window and saw something small there, but I really can't say that was an alien body. A lot of people jump on that and say, yeah, you must have seen an alien, but there's just as much chance that they were trying to figure out the size difference and how the seats fit a body, and they had made up a small mannequin or something. I didn't see anything moving around alive. So I always say no, I have never seen a living alien.
Why do you think you were chosen for the job?
That's very difficult to say. I really don't know. I'm certainly not the most qualified as far as physics goes. So I really don't know. I approach things at a very different viewpoint. They might have been frustrated after a long time of walking down the same path and not getting anywhere, and they wanted someone essentially to come out of left field and approach it from a different angle with a different viewpoint, and I'm kind of known for that.
Why did you went public with the information?
When?
Why?
Why? That's, again, a complex question. It's not just one reason. There's several, stemming from many things. Harassment, to protect myself, the fact that this information being contained is also unfair, but there are many, many reasons.
After you went public, did they try to silence you in any way?
Oh, in every way. Yes, I was shot at while getting on the freeway here in Las Vegas. Friends were harassed and taken out of work that knew me. Many things happened.
Well, he was upset about the security at the base. It was an oppressive place to work. He was upset that they didn't have better scientists and a more open kind of research that would allow them to finally get to the bottom of how this alien technology worked. He thought that that information should be shared with the entire world in order to benefit the entire world. At the same time, he was going through some personal crises that led to him sharing some of this information with some people that he knew. Once he got caught, he was worried about his safety. They put guns to his head. They told him he was in a heck of a lot of trouble. And I think the reason he was willing to talk to me, at least what he told me in the beginning, was he was trying to save his hide. He figured by going public that they wouldn't dare do something to him. It seems to me that for several months there, after he was talking to me, there were serious attempts to intimidate him, to keep him quiet, but he had the courage to pursue it, and I think he made the right decision, because I'm not sure that he would be alive today if he had not spoken to the television camera. Michael, I was in Las Vegas television for 10 years. I worked stories about political corruption, organized crime, illegal drugs. I've never done a story anything like this. When I first met Bob Lazar, I was only tangentially interested in the UFO material. I had done some talk shows about it. I knew the public was interested in it, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to do the story about Area 51. Stories about Area 51 and possible alien technology there had been floating around for as long as I had lived in Las Vegas, but there had never been any thorough investigation, primarily because no one who had inside knowledge of the program had ever been willing to talk about it publicly until Bob Lazar. When I met Bob, I had a meeting with him and my news director. We asked him a lot of questions. We asked him the basics of his story. It obviously has a fantastic story, but we decided to go forward with it because Bob himself seemed so credible. It became very difficult very soon, however, because trying to verify Bob's background proved extremely difficult. It is still proving extremely difficult. For example, we quickly found out that the schools that he said he went to had no records that he was ever there. His former employers, where he said he worked, had no records that he'd ever been there. In particular, Los Alamos National Lab was the linchpin of his credibility. We thought if we could prove that he worked at Los Alamos, as he said, it must have meant that he went to school somewhere, because they don't just hire people off the street. And if he worked at Los Alamos National Lab on classified material, it made sense that he could have been hired to work at other classified programs, such as S4, Papoose Lake. However, the people at Los Alamos Lab said they had no records that he'd ever been there. They stalled on our requests for information. They wouldn't return phone calls. They wouldn't answer